Hello, welcome to episode 191 of the Mind Over Finger podcast. Today, I speak with David Radzynski, Concertmaster of the Cleveland Orchestra. We have a fantastic conversation for you. We cover many topics that I think you're going to find fascinating. We talk about his practice habits as concertmaster, violin technique and tone production, experimentation in practicing, managing repertoire and practicing efficiently, overcoming doubts, and the importance of self awareness and kindness in one's journey. Let me give you a little bit more information about David Radzynski if you don't know him. He was appointed by the Cleveland Orchestra in 2022 after 8 years serving as concertmaster of the Israel Philharmonic. In addition to his duties as concertmaster in Cleveland, David is a very active soloist and chamber musician. Some of his memorable performances as soloist include concerts with the Israel Philharmonic, the Lodz Philharmonic in Poland, the Polish National Philharmonic, the Columbus Symphony, and the Amadeus Chamber Orchestra of Poznan, where he premiered the double concerto composed by his father, Jan Radzynski. He's an avid chamber musician and he's performed across the world with musicians such as Emmanuel Ax and Martha Argerich. And he was guest concertmaster with several orchestras, including the Houston, Pittsburgh, and Cincinnati Symphony Orchestras. David is a graduate of Indiana University, and he has a master's degree from Yale and an artist certificate from the International Center for Music at Park University. His teachers include Roland and Almira Vamos, Paul Cantor, Mauricio Fuchs, Kevork Marderosian, Sioko Aki, and Ben Sayevich. So there's a great episode in store for you. I hope you enjoy. And before I pass on the mic to David, I want to remind you of two things. First of all, if you enjoy this conversation, if you enjoy this episode, please do me a favor and talk about the Mind Over Finger podcast with someone you think might benefit from the content of this episode. Let's spread the joy of music to everyone we think could really benefit from this content. And the second thing is, don't forget to join me April 4th through 6th from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Central for the Mastering the Stage workshop. It's absolutely free, and by signing up, you get access to the replays. And what we're going to cover in this workshop is everything you need to bridge the gap between the practice room and the stage. We're going to uncover the reason why you know what to do in the practice room, but you cannot implement or you don't see the results that you expect. We're going to understand what is working for you, what doesn't work for you, what are the stumbling blocks that you can't seem to conquer, and everything that you need to really go from practicing to feeling free on stage. So that's Mastering the Stage, April 4th through 6th. And you're going to find all of the information using the link here below this video or by going to tinyurl.com/mastering the stage. So join us for Mastering the Stage, and I hope you enjoy this episode, this conversation with David Radzynski, concertmaster of the Cleveland Orchestra.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. Awesome. Okay, you ready?
Yeah. Yep.
And first thing I do usually is I mess up the guest's last name. So
Okay.
hopefully
No,
it
no,
does
no.
not.
You can't. You can't. You've already said it correctly. I was very impressed.
Awesome. David Radzynski, it's so great to have you on the show.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
David, I shared some information about you in my introduction, but I'm sure the listeners would love to hear about your musical path from you. So, can you please tell us a little bit about how that unfolded for you?
Both of my parents are musicians. So my mom teaches piano, and my dad is a former cellist and a composer. And so I grew up with music in the house pretty much constantly. And it was pretty obvious to my parents that I was drawn to music at a very young age, even when I was, you know, 2 or 3, or, you know, they used to play for me the magic flute all the time. And that was one of my favorite pieces as a kid. I mean, it still is one of my favorite pieces. But yeah, I mean, it was pretty obvious to my parents that I was naturally drawn to music, and so I started with piano. Then I picked up the violin. Um, the reason for picking the violin was a very childish reason. It was, I think, one of my best friends at the time was playing violin, so I wanted to. I mean, it wasn't. I'm very happy I chose it, but there wasn't. It wasn't like there was no deep reason for why I chose to play the violin. Um, I think playing the piano was very helpful in my musical development. I think it's very important for every musician to at least learn to play the keyboard, and you just feel harmony in a different way, and you can really learn a lot, combined with music theory training that I had actually from my parents. Um, my dad especially was teaching me. I mean, my mom was teaching me the circle of fifths and all that, all those basic concepts when I was a kid, and then my dad later on took over, and we did music theory together. And it was I really commend people who are able to play two instruments. Some people play actually. There's some people who can play several instruments, which I don't even understand. But for me, I think I needed to put all of my energy into one instrument, and just slowly over the years, I think I just had more. I was more drawn to the violin later on, but that's how I ended up playing the violin, I guess. Um, my parents were definitely an influence for sure, but they never forced me to do it. It was never, we want you to, you're going to play a musical instrument. It was, they felt like my sister started out playing violin and piano as well, but then she just, it was clearly not for her, and that's fine. She became a doctor. We're all very happy. So,
I think we're all very happy that you
yeah.
became a violinist.
Oh, well, thank you.
And it's great what
Yeah.
you're saying in terms of how your parents could sense that you were drawn to music and they paid attention
Yeah.
to that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
They were.
these days you have that little gig in Cleveland. And
Yeah.
of course, I'm very fascinated by fantastic musicians like yourself and the process that they go through to get to this point. So can you tell
Mhm.
us a little bit about that? What is it for you, that process of walking into the practice room and honing on your skill on the instrument?
Uh, what is the process? That's a really good question, because you really, I mean, I'm never happy with my, there's always something that I feel that I can improve in my playing. I never feel totally satisfied, or just, "Oh, okay, it's my job. I'll just learn this piece, and then I'll learn this program, and I'll show up to rehearsal." It's always constantly, um, I always start from scales. I mean, I have a whole crazy thing I do, but I do open strings. I always start from open strings just to feel the instrument, even if it's for just a couple of minutes, to work on my bow changes at the frog, at the tip, um, and just to feel the weight of my arm, and just to feel. I mean, it's to feel the instrument, just get my bearings. Then I do one fingered scales on every finger.
Hmm.
I do it on the G string. I don't know why. Um, um, and then I do two fingered scales. So first and second finger, second and third, third and fourth, and up and down. Um, then I do regular scales, 4 octaves. the one I'm doing now is B flat minor. I guess because starts in second position, and so second position is not the most comfortable position to start from. Maybe I don't know. Um, that's the one I decided that I'm doing right now. Um, arpeggios, um, and then I take, just to keep my fingers in check. Um, well, then I do octaves. I do fingered octaves, and I don't just do like a scale in octaves. I'll take, for example, I might do a patterned passage. So I might go da dee da 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 da. I can't sing, but just till I get to the top, and then I go down in that same fashion, uh, using first and fourth fingers, then first and third fingers, then second and fourth fingers. Um, I'll do a regular passage in fingered octaves, and then I'll take a passage from Paganini, that famous passage from Paganini 17, and I'll practice that slowly, just that passage. Um, and that's the other thing. Like you can take, I used to think as a student, well, now I'm going to work on this Paganini caprice, and I'm going to work on the entire caprice. Well, sometimes to work on an entire caprice can take hours, and then you still haven't gotten to your concerto or
Yeah.
whatever it is that you have to learn. And so I I'm going to take this passage from this caprice, and I'm going to see if I can make this really good. Just for the sake of to keep my fingers in shape. Um, so there's that famous passage from Paganini 17. Then I'll take the thirds and the tenths from Paganini 4. So I'll take that and just that passage
Mhm.
and work on that. So then, okay, I did my thirds, I did tenths, I did fingered octaves, I did arpeggios. Okay, now I feel, and sometimes I don't have 2 hours to do that, or on a day when I have a free day and I can practice the entire time, or for as long as I want, I can spend an hour to an hour and a half just on maintenance. But some days I don't have time for that, so I will do a smaller version of all of those things,
Mhm.
um, and just do spend 45 minutes, but it's still better than nothing. But just if it's a really busy day and I need to get to learn, I have only a few days to learn this program or whatever, and I need to work and learn quickly. So, but I will always, there's never a day where I don't spend time on maintaining. And I only spoke about my left hand.
Right.
There's also there's also the right arm. Um, um, and I feel that I find nowadays that when people talk about technique, they talk about their left hand. Oh, how in tune can somebody play? How fast can somebody play this passage? Oh, can you play all those fingered octaves? And can you play this arpeggio? But what about quality of sound? And
Mhm.
where has that gone? And I feel that that is a lost art form. I mean, people play with it. I mean, I'm not saying that people nowadays don't play with a beautiful sound, but I believe that sound production and sound quality, um, 100 years ago, when you took like the top players, they all had their own sound, something that really defined them and their playing. Nowadays, it became a little generic in my opinion.
Mm.
Um, and it, it takes technique to play with a beautiful tone. It really does. That is technique as well. It's not just this left hand. That's not Technique is not just left hand. It is very much the right hand and the right arm.
Yeah.
And there's this. Um, there's this thing that a lot of violinists, young violinists, do, some not so young, that I can't stand, which is
Yeah.
the portato. It's the portato disease,
Hmm.
where it's they're playing legato, or they want to play legato, but you hear them separating the notes actually. This thing. And I'm exaggerating, but um it's like I consider it very rare now when I hear somebody playing like a really smooth legato,
Yeah.
for example. That's an aspect of technique that I don't think enough of us focus on, and we're too busy thinking about this one shift that is bothering us or whatever. But I think sound production, tone, and the right arm, it's all connected. And I actually find when it comes to intonation that if my right arm is doing what it's supposed to be doing, in connection with the left hand and left arm, left hand, then it helps the intonation actually.
Oh, yeah.
So
So
it's
sometimes
all,
you
sorry,
miss
that
the
was a long
shift
answer, but
because you miss the shift because your right arm is all over the place sometimes, you know.
right, right.
That
So
was
no, sorry,
actually
that was
going
a
to be one of my questions for you is how your approach to tone production, because I was telling some of my clients that I was going to be speaking with you, and someone was asking me to ask you about tone production and how to really, let's say, like increase our ability to produce a beautiful tone. So if someone is practicing and working on their tone production and trying to really get a better sound, what
mm.
would be an advice that you would give?
First of all, you have to know what sound you want.
Mm,
If you can't hear in your head what kind of sound you want to have, then it's over before you've started it even, you know. um there has to be a like, let's say you're working on a passage, on a melody. It's not enough to just work on, to think of it with your brain logically. Okay, I'm going to phrase it here, and I will make a shift there, and maybe it will be nice to make a glissando here. That's not enough. You have to first of all feel it in your I don't know how to translate kishkis. It's a word in Yiddish, but you have to feel it in your gut. In your gut, I think that's what it is. Kishkis, in your gut. You have to feel it. You have to feel in your gut how you want this to sound like, what you want it to sound like, what kind of sound you want. And then when you know what kind of sound you want, then it's like, okay, well, what is the best approach in getting that kind of sound? It's not enough to me, I could be wrong, but it's not enough just to play with a nice sound.
mhm.
That's like saying have a nice day. What do you mean nice? That doesn't mean anything. It can be nice, unoffensive kind of, but leaves no impression. Um, so, Ivry Gitlis, for example, he had a very distinct sound. Um, David Oistrakh had a very distinct sound. I don't know. I think that, um, I mean, I guess we're talking about two different things. It's about finding your own voice as an artist,
Mhm.
and oh yes, this is clearly so and so is playing. So that's, okay, you have your own voice, but then, um, even more detailed would be, okay, here's a passage. What do I want this to sound like? Um, so I would say that's the first step. Know what you want first, and then, uh, figure out the best way in what am I trying to say here? Figuring out the best way to achieve that sound.
Mhm. How would
Yeah.
you recommend that they practice? For tone production.
for tone. Um, I would recommend that people experiment. I think that not everything should be treated like a textbook.
I love this answer.
Um, I think that there's a little too much of this. Okay, my bow needs to be here, and yes, of course, the whole Galamian school, which is great, and Maurizio Fuchs taught us this when I was in school, this out and in and all this stuff. But okay, that's great. But you also have to experiment, not just do what your teacher's telling you, because yes, I mean, do what your teacher's telling you. I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm saying that, okay, there's the sort of the textbook. This is how you hold the bow. This is where your bow is generally supposed to be. It should be parallel to the bridge, all that. But you should, I think one should dedicate some time in their practicing to just experiment,
Mm.
um, with different sounds. Try playing sul tasto and use fast bow speed. And then try playing that with a really fast vibrato and see what that sounds like. Play a little closer to the bridge with a slower vibrato. Um, Try making a glissando within vibrato. In other words, vibrate through your glissando. And as you do that, go a little bit closer to the fingerboard. What does that sound like?
Mm.
All sorts of different, I mean, it's like you're painting, and how does a painter figure out what colors to use? You have to combine different colors, and it's not just the bow, it's also in the left hand that can give a slight nuance to the color that you want to use and what eventually comes out of the fiddle. So I think that a lot of, and that goes back to what kind of a sound do you want to have? What kind of an artist do you want to be? What kind of voice do you want to have? And then start experimenting
Yeah.
in finding that, you know, um, and it starts at a really young age. At least for me, I was always influenced by. I wasn't so much influenced by new school players. I was always influenced by the old school, and I still really mostly revert to them. I mean, Chrysler, um, Heifetz, Sharing, even some of the those concert masters. Joe Silverstein, Abram Stern is an incredible violinist. Not a lot of recordings of him. I mean, there's some videos where he's already old, but you can tell he was a hell of a player. And there's some recordings where he was young. Very few, but incredible player. And I remember when as a kid, I went through an Isaac Stern phase, and so I would try to play like, and I think that's a good thing for kids, especially to be influenced by these artists and to. It's not good to try to imitate somebody else as a professional. You want to have your own voice, but I
Mhm.
think for someone who's young, when you're 12 years old, I think it's good to be influenced by great artists and to maybe try to experiment with that. And I just think that the more you experiment, the closer you'll get to finding what works for you.
Mm. Yeah. I love
Yeah,
this answer so much because nowadays we have so much information coming at us all the time. It's like the
too much.
fire hydrant.
Yeah,
And I see it in myself also at times, but I see it so widely around me when people want to, let's say, master a specific skill. It's who has the perfect recipe and who has the trick and the hack that will work. And
Hmm.
we
Hmm.
forget that actually all of this needs to be processed, and we need to experiment until, what you were talking about, until we feel it in our gut, until we have somehow understood how it feels like to produce that. It starts with, as you say, the vision or the idea of the sound that we're after, or whatever other technique. It's We have a clear concept of what it is that we're after, but I think that we don't tend to experiment enough. We try for 5 minutes, and then we want to, it doesn't feel quite right, so we will read one more article. Maybe there's the answer in there. So I totally
It's
agree.
not a, and it's not a scientific, you can't really, you can't break it down scientifically. People
Hmm.
have tried, to break down scientifically, mathematically, how does Heifetz make that glissando and that chanson poem? Only he can do it. People
Yeah,
have tried imitating it. Doesn't work.
yeah, yeah,
Only he can do it that way, in his way. And only you then can do, but it has to come from you, and it has to be
yeah,
your own voice, and only you can do that. You know what I mean? It really, it's a very personal thing, and that ties into, I think, the part of music making that you really can't quite explain, you know.
yes, yes,
Um,
absolutely.
so
It's like cooking
yeah.
also. Somehow I follow recipes and it's always a mess in the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
David, one question that I had for you, you perform so much repertoire and you are in a high pressure situation. Are there some specific ways of practicing that you feel really translate well from the practice room to the stage? What does that look like for you?
First of all, I mean, I didn't realize how helpful it would be until I ended up having no choice but to do it. When you really study the score well, and you know the score, and you know who you're playing in unison with, and you know who has what, who's playing what at all times, um, that really changes the game in terms of how you feel, even in the practice room. And it also, imagine, answers a lot of technical questions too.
Yeah.
Um, I can't think of a specific example, but it could be in a sonata even. Oh, the pianist here has a jump, or has this passage that the pianist will need to bring out this passage, and that'll actually give me time to make that shift. I don't have to shift so quickly. So in other words, you're just thinking more musically.
Yeah.
Um, and I find that I personally find that practicing a piece, especially if there's a recording, playing with a recording is helpful. Um, Not on a daily basis, because you don't want to get used to somebody else's interpretation, but just so that you can hear, we have this technology, why not use it? So it's just so that you can hear the instrumentation, in you can hear the context, as well as knowing the context, but also just hearing it and playing along with it, is helpful. But not too much, because, as I said, you don't want to get used to somebody else's interpretation, because when you come to rehearsal, it'll be totally different.
Hmm.
But it does, at least for me, I find it helpful just once or twice, taking a recording, playing through the with that recording, maybe taking somebody else's recording, some a different interpretation, different tempos, playing with that, and then you know I find that very helpful. And uh, again, it does help answer technical questions. I mean, you all of a sudden, certain things that were easy might seem more difficult, and some things that were more difficult might actually be easier.
Yeah.
um, I find that very often, actually, in the practice room, certain things that I've found difficult in the rehearsal are a lot easier, and the same could be vice versa.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how about, those passages? What you just said made me think of that. What about these passages that no matter how much time we spend on them, no matter how many different techniques we practice them with, they always feel difficult. What's your
Yeah,
strategy with that?
practice them. I mean, they're always going to be difficult. So,
Yeah.
um, um, just so you know that like you're going to get a piece that's famously or infamously difficult to play. Like let's say Don Juan, right? It's always difficult. I don't care what anybody says. It's not easy. And so, okay, or whatever piece it is, let's, whatever it is. Um, okay, so you know you're going to get a piece that's difficult. You got to first of all plan in advance.
Hmm.
Don't wait until you have 2 days left until the rehearsal. Give yourself however long you feel you will need, and plan accordingly. You have the schedule in front of you. Say, okay, I'm going to need this amount of time, and with experience, you end up being able to gauge like, okay, a week should be, 2 days should be enough for this. A week and a half I'll need for this or for that to prepare, and just planning in advance. I Because if there's a passage that's, or if there are pieces that are always going to be difficult no matter what, and there are pieces like that, no matter how many times you've practiced a certain piece of repertoire, it's always difficult. Just good planning, plan
Yeah.
in advance, and you'll be fine.
I was curious about how to stay on top of the schedule with your position. So I'm guessing that is the
Hmm.
same answer, right? Good planning.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one thing you really do learn in the professional world, you learn how to learn fast.
Mm,
It's a really good skill to have, and um, you won't. You're not always going to have the luxury that you have as a student, where you have a month to prepare something. Oh, if only I had a month, you
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
that seems like such a huge luxury. I used to think, oh, I need a month to prepare this, at least a month. I need time. Because every note has to be super, you know, uh, polished, but most times you don't have that. Most times you don't have that. I mean, on average, I would say for an orchestral program, I mean, a week should be enough time to prepare any program on average.
Hmm.
Sometimes you need more, depends. If it's an opera, if you're preparing an opera, you should give yourself more time than
Yeah.
that. I
I
mean, if it's like
concur.
yeah, if you're, that's like an opera. By the way, opera is probably the hardest, most difficult thing. And I'm not just talking about technically. Um, Technically, usually the operas aren't. I mean, it depends. That also depends. But just musically is difficult. I remember we did my first opera I ever led was with the Israel Philharmonic. It was with Zubin Mehta. Now Zubin is, he's legendary, and he was incredible and the clearest hands,
Mm.
and he was incredible with the soloists, and so working with him was a real pleasure. Um, but I gave myself a good amount of time. I can't remember exactly how much time, you know, maybe a month or maybe less, I had a few weeks that I
Hmm.
gave myself to really, because you have to really know the recitatives and the soloists, and they take so much freedom, and you have to be, you really have to know it inside out. um I don't know why I'm talking about operas, but wait, what was the question?
Or I was talking about, having to handle so much repertoire and
Yeah,
always in these high pressure situations.
right, right. Well, I think you get used to the rhythm of of the professional life. You end up you do get used to it. And I found that when I first started, like in the Israel Philharmonic was when I started, I didn't have any experience. And that, or they we worked a lot, and I just found that I think knowing the score was a huge thing for me, in learning the piece at a quicker pace than it
Hmm.
would normally take me if I didn't have, as a student, I would probably think I needed so much time, but knowing the score definitely speeds up the process, at least for me. Um, and knowing how to practice well and efficiently.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my answer for you.
Hmm.
Knowing how to practice in a way that is efficient. And very not a lot of people know how to practice efficiently. And sometimes repeating a passage over and over is not the way to learn something quickly.
Right.
Even if let's say you only have 2 days to learn something, but you have to, let's say, sometimes you're in a situation and you only have 2 days to learn something. I remember it happened to me, one of the concert masters, because we were in Israel, we had more than, it was like three concert masters. And I think both of them got sick. And I had to learn, there was a program, and I didn't even know I was leading it. I had to learn it in 2 days. It was they unexpected, and um, you have to still, even if you find yourself in that situation, instead of panicking, you have to practice as if you have a
Hmm.
week. Slow, calculated. Okay, let's listen to it first. You first listen to the piece, then you look at the score, you mark everything, who you have in unison with, what are the voices, and you can hear in the music, what are the voices that are important for me to listen to, who do I have dialogue with, who am I responding to. Okay, that's work, that takes time. Okay,
Yeah.
then okay, now let's look at the part itself. Then you start practicing it, and you start to you can sort of isolate the spots that are tricky. You're like, okay, I need to work on this passage. I need to work on that passage. You work on the trickiest parts first. And then there's some moments in the piece where you don't need to work on it as much. So you go through over that, and then you try to play it through, and then try with a recording and see how it works. And you'll be surprised at how quickly actually you can learn a piece just by following these steps, but in a cold and calculated way,
Hmm.
without, because it is stressful. And like my wife will tell you, like, I'm always, I need to learn this, I need to learn this, I need to learn that. Um, but once I'm in the practice room, my brain switches and I just become very, okay, let's listen to this. Now I'm going to mark my part. I'm going to look at the score. I'm going to mark my part. I'm going to look at the passages. Boom, 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 boom. And it works out.
That's
So,
really great advice because it's to spend the time where it's maximizing your results instead of just
mhm.
rushing in and we think that by moving fast we're getting so much done. Moving our arms around, we're getting things done, but when we really
um,
take that time to isolate those key elements that need to come first and then the
you
work will
first you first need to know the piece in here. I
mind
find it
over
very
finger.
mind over finger. Know the piece in here before you start putting it in here and in here. But really, I can't. I don't have. I don't. Maybe if when I was younger, I would just take the part and I would start playing immediately. But now I can't approach a piece without, unless it's brand new piece, contemporary work. But if it's a piece that I, uh, uh, you know, um, let's say it's a piece that I haven't played before, but there's a recording and there's information and there's a score that you can use, I don't feel that I can really approach um, the physical part of the practicing until I have it down mentally.
Yeah.
Um, Again, with a contemporary piece, well, you have there's no real. I mean, with contemporary music, it's a little different. With contemporary music, first of all, the composer usually writes tempo markings, and you know, of course, if there's going to be a score, and hopefully they will be kind enough to give you a copy. Um, but you don't really you do there is a lot of things that you do figure out in the rehearsal because it's brand new and has never been played before, and we're all learning this piece together.
Mhm.
That's a totally different kind of experience, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love all of these answers. David, I want to be respectful of your time because I know
That's okay.
you're very
No,
busy.
I'm happy to talk. Yeah.
So I have a few questions from the rapid fire questions that I'd love to ask you.
Rapid
What?
fire. Let's
Yes. What makes practice most
No,
enjoyable for
I
you?
said no. I'm just yeah, sorry. Let's. I'll be serious.
What makes practice most enjoyable for you?
Um, when I achieve the results that I want, and that usually happens when I record myself. I find that sometimes it's difficult to hear yourself when you're playing because you're so in your own world. And so I find that recording yourself, even if it's on an iPhone, you can't really hear as well. But just to record yourself so you can hear what it is you're doing,
Yeah.
even if it's just working for intonation. Um, but you'll notice things better if you record yourself. I find that very helpful. Um, Marking the spots and working on those spots and being patient with yourself. So, you don't really get the satisfaction. That's the problem. You don't get the satisfaction immediately. Don't
Mm,
expect when you go into the practice room, don't expect immediate satisfaction. You might get it in a week. You're not going to get satisfaction in 5 minutes.
yeah.
But, but if you work on something for more than 5 minutes and you're not getting, and you don't notice even a slight improvement, you're doing something wrong.
Mm,
So you're not gonna, you might get the ultimate satisfaction might come in a day, it might come in 3 days, it might come in a week. Um, but if you're working, let's say on it, to work on one passage for 5 minutes is a lot, actually.
yeah.
let's I mean, let's just say you're working on, let's say, mm, the third movement of Brahms concerto, this arpeggios, and you're working on it for 5 minutes, and then okay, now let's play it again, let's see, and it's not even getting slightly better, you're practicing it wrong.
Right.
So there are so you have to be able to catch yourself, and sometimes I catch myself too late, but you have to be be able to catch yourself when you are practicing in a way that's not effective,
Yeah.
because you'll just get stuck on that thing. So uh, give yourself 5 minutes. If you're working on a passage that's really difficult for you, give yourself 5 minutes without expecting like perfection. But if you're noticing a slight improvement, even if it's a small microscopic improvement, at least, okay, at least you know that, okay, this is helping,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, yeah, that's so
but
important. You
but the
should get all
most
of this on t-shirts and you could make a
yeah,
racket
right.
with the merch.
No, but yeah, practicing. So the most satisfaction is when, yes, when I finally achieve the ultimate, okay, this is what I wanted, then it's
Mm,
very satisfying.
I love that. What about a habit that you have that you think contributed to your success?
Um, well, it's not so much a habit. It's a personality trait. I'm always worried all the time that I'm not going to be ready.
Mhm.
On the one hand, I'm very lazy and I can sit in front of the couch and just watch TV or whatever. Play video. I'm a gamer too, so or whatever. I can sit and do nothing for hours. But um, there's this. I have this need to this fear that I'm not going to be ready when I'm on stage, even if it's a rehearsal. I have to be prepared,
Mhm.
and it's just this constant need to be prepared. And so that's what I think contributed to my success because um, and the constant need to improve my playing.
Mhm.
That's I think that's what it is. It's both. It's the need to be professional and to be prepared at all times, but also I have this fear that I always fear. I mean, we start playing at the age of what 6, 5. Some people start at the age of 3. Oh my God! But we've dedicated our whole lives to this craft, and I dread the day um, when I won't when I'll start noticing the decline in my playing because it will happen. It happens to everyone,
Mhm.
and so I have this fear of, oh my God, you know my I have this fear that my playing will decline or won't keep getting better and better and better. And so I'm sorry, this isn't a rapid answer. You're giving me rapid fire questions, but I'm not really giving rapid fire answers.
They never are.
Um, it's
In
the
the history
constant,
of this show, they've never been rapid.
the need to improve, and the constant need to be prepared.
Mhm. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about some doubts or resistance, internal or external, that you might have faced on your journey?
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, what is the just examples or
Yeah. What are some examples of doubts or resistance that you had to face?
rejection from places or people when you hold when you're holding a high profile job, and I'm not particularly speaking about my current job, but you're always going to feel it comes with the territory. But um well, we can start from when I was a student. Just I wasn't really I didn't know what was going to be my future. I
Hmm.
think that was pretty scary. um I wasn't much of a competition guy. I didn't like violin competitions. I found the experience to be the opposite of what music making should be. It's the opposite. It's the opposite of music for me,
Hmm.
competitions. And but I did find the preparation. I only did like 2 competitions in my life, um, but I found the preparation for them to be highly beneficial, and playing under immense pressure is also good. But I never really, you apply to a music festival, maybe you don't get in, um, and dealing with that, or people that are trying to, you know, you always encounter people who try to bring you down. Um, they see that you're successful, and maybe they feel insecure about the fact that they didn't get to where they want to be in life, and so they take it out on other people. they're always you're always going to run into people like that. And I just feel like the most important thing that you can do for yourself is know what you are,
Mhm.
know what you're not, know what you're not, know what you are, um, know what you also want to know not just what you want to achieve and what you want to be, but what you don't want to be and who you don't want to be like.
Yeah.
Um, the world is full of sharks, and you know you don't want to be that. I mean,
Mhm.
I know I don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
And I think the most important thing for you is to know what your value is. You get to, you know what your value is. And to be honest with yourself,
Mm.
I had a friend in the Israel Philharmonic, and there was some position that was open, and I asked him if I think it was a principal position. I don't remember if it was, it might have been assistant concertmaster. And I said, you should, you play beautifully. I think you should consider auditioning for that job. And he told me, look, David, I know what I am and I know what I'm not. I'm very happy where I am, and that's fine. I appreciate you telling me that I can audition for this, but I know what I am, I know what I'm not, and I that's not for me. And so I thought that was incredibly wise,
Mhm.
just hearing that from somebody. And that's very important, to know what you are and know what you're not, and be honest with yourself. You know, there are people out there who are completely deluded, totally deluded. It's like, what are you doing? Be honest with yourself. Um, that's the I had another friend who studied violin, and he just realized, he's like, I'm never going to make it as a violinist. Like, it's just not going to happen. He switched professions completely. Um, but then, of course, there are people that are incredibly gifted and hardworking and dedicated, super professional, and you just need to keep on going. And life can, you know, bring you down sometimes. But I think the definition of success is not so much how you deal with success, because that's pretty easy. When you're successful, it's easy. It's
Yeah.
like you feel great, you work hard, you're super motivated, everything's great. But I think the definition of success is more how you deal with the difficulties that you're going to face, because you are going to face difficulties unless you just settle. And but if you really are ambitious and you want to aim as high as you possibly can, it's not an easy road. And don't let other people define to you what your value is.
Mhm.
um, you know what it is, and the moment you put your bow to the string, everyone's going to know what it is.
Thank you
So
for sharing this. I think that was really
yeah.
important for many people to hear. Yes.
No, it's my pleasure. No, I mean, I have I mean, I've been doing this job for almost 10 years now, so I have some experience, maybe not as much as some of my older colleagues, but um, it's an incredibly rewarding profession. Yeah, I remember when I played Heldenleben with Zubin Mehta, and it was sold out in Carnegie Hall,
Mhm.
and that was probably one of my most memorable moments and performances. Um, I was performing with, well, some of my best friends are in that orchestra, but also with one of my favorite conductors, and he particularly, we had a very special, have still, but a very special relationship, working relationship. So just to play with him was such a treat. I don't know, there was something about that night where I when we finished playing, I was like, this is why I do this, you
Mm.
know. Um, but for every moment of that, there's going to be struggle along the way. And
Yeah.
so you really like you really have to love it. That's the thing. Like because it's it's not you're not it's not just I mean, I don't think there's any profession in which you feel constantly rewarded all the time. Um it it's hard work. You have to be disciplined, and I think the belief in yourself and in your value is what will help you get through all of that.
Mm. Beautifully
Um,
put.
so
Beautifully put. David,
yeah,
in closing, what is maybe an actionable tip that the listeners could implement today?
be kind to yourself,
Mm.
and then you'll be kind to others.
I love that.
I think. If you're not generally the people that I encounter who are uncomfortable in their own skin generally tend to treat other people badly.
Hmm.
So if you're comfortable in your own skin, or even if you're not totally comfortable in your own skin, but be kind to yourself.
That's perfect. It says it all.
Yeah.
David Radzynski, thank you so much for taking this time and speaking with me today. There's so much amazing insight and wisdom for the listeners, so I'm truly grateful.
Oh, thank you. This was it was great. It was I had a lot of fun talking to you and sharing some thoughts on this crazy profession that we do.